Have you ever been in a communication desert? It's that place where communication just completely breaks down. Maybe it was a conversation with a colleague or a team member or an employee or even a friend that it seemed to be going well and then suddenly it wasn't. Maybe the conversation escalated into an argument, or you felt like you were talking in circles, or worse, you felt like you and the other person or the group were in two completely different conversations. Regardless, if you've been in that space, you were left wondering what happened. It's happened to all of us. The good news is that you can bring these conversations back from the brink of a full communication breakdown. The better news is that with a willingness to engage in real conversations, which require you to listen differently, you can prevent yourself and others from entering the communication desert. Keep watching. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Dawn Marie Turner, President of Turner Change Management and creator of the Readiness Mindset. The communication desert, that's what I call it, is that space where two or more people are talking. Words are being exchanged. Heads are nodding, but you're not really having a conversation. Once you enter the desert, the opportunity for new insights, problem solving, and moving forward stops. In this space, you are not communicating in a healthy and productive way. A colleague asked for my help. She was about to take on a new role, a challenging new responsibility, one that would require her to step out of her comfort zone, learn a new way of working, and lead in an area she had never led before. The conversation was going well, and then it wasn't. We were in that space I call the communication desert. Our entry into that desert had been so subtle that I initially didn't notice. But then, as I looked around and really started to listen, it was clear that we were stranded in the middle of a communication desert. My first thought, how do I get us out? And my second thought was one of curiosity. How did this happen? Before I share the answer to both of those questions, it will be helpful to explore a little more about the difference between communication and real conversation. Today, communication has become synonymous with giving information. In my experience, when a leader talks about communicating with her team or having a conversation, she's usually talking about giving them some information. For example, maybe you host a town hall or a team meeting to present a new idea. And at the end of the presentation, you ask, are there any questions? Although that exchange of information, that question and answer period can feel like a conversation, it's not a real conversation. And that's because your focus is still on giving information to persuade another person or group to accept your idea, to look at things from your perspective. Judith Glaser, author of Conversational Intelligence, calls this type of question and answer session a positional conversation. Real conversations are different. They're interactive, they're dynamic, and they create opportunities for new insights and learning. I have advocated for a long time about the need and value of real conversation to enable change. So now that we have a little bit of an understanding of the difference between communication and a real conversation, let's talk about navigating yourself out of the communication desert, because it can still happen. So what do you do when you find yourself in that dreaded space. The first step, recognize when you've entered the space. In my case, there were 3 key signs that we had stopped having a real conversation and were simply exchanging words. The first, I was defending my position and perspective. Second, my frustration at her not accepting my position had led me to stop being curious about her perspective and position. And third, the tone and volume of our conversation had changed. Once you recognize that you're in that space, then you must navigate your way out. And the first step to do that is to shift your perspective. That's what I did. I stopped trying to convince her to see things from my perspective. Shifting your perspective is like a reset button. It allows you to end that conversation in a more productive place and opens up the opportunity for real conversation, which is what happened in my case. The shift in perspective allowed us to re-engage and have a real conversation. Although navigating yourself out of the communication desert is helpful, knowing what to do to prevent yourself from entering in the first place is essential when you're enabling change in your organization. So to do that, it's useful to understand how easy it is to get into this type of communication so that you can avoid it altogether. And active listening is the key to avoiding a communication desert. When your communication goes off track, it's easy to decide it's because the other person or group is not listening. That's easy to do, incorrect, and not helpful. It's not helpful for 2 reasons. First, real conversations, they don't go off track because there isn't a track. That doesn't mean real conversations don't have a purpose or achieve an outcome. They do. Real conversations have a flow and a rhythm, and it's this flow that allows for the new insights and ideas. Second, it's often you that has stopped listening. That's what happened to me. I was so intent on defending, persuading, and telling the other person that I had stopped listening to her perspective. Initially, it's not always obvious that you've stopped listening. It's not like you've checked out of the conversation. But there is a difference between hearing the words another person is speaking and actively listening. Psychiatrist and author of Just Listen, Dr. Mark Goulston states that to actively listen, we need to rewire our brain. That's because our ability to actively listen, especially if we think we know the person, is being impeded by our perception of that person or group. And our perceptions are based on our previous experience and encounters with that individual or group. Once we form a perception, and it happens almost instantaneously and unconsciously, it gets hardwired into our brain through our words. And these words act like a filter and impede our ability to listen in the present moment. How many times have you heard yourself, and write it in the comment section below as you've seen an employee coming to talk to you, or maybe it's a neighbor or a colleague, here comes blank, they are difficult, resistant to change, unreliable, or what do they want now? In that moment, before the conversation has even started, you have just lost the ability to actively listen. The key is to get rid of the filter. As Dr. Goulston states, the stuff you think you already know about someone is in reality blocking what you need to know. This is one of the reasons I have advocated for over 20 years for leaders to stop managing resistance and adopt a readiness mindset. Because once you label a person or group as resistant, you block out what you need to know to enable the adoption of those new activities and behaviors. Active listening will allow you to avoid the communication desert. It is the process of engaging and connecting in that present moment. To do this, we need to be willing to let go of our assumptions. Get curious in order to uncover the meaning and intent of what that person or group is saying, or a facial expression, instead of just assuming that you already know. One final thought. There is a place for giving others information, for telling instead of asking, and even persuading a group or person to do or not do something in order to prevent or avoid something that could be harmful. However, if your goal is to raise the level of performance, tap into the collective intelligence of your teams, you need to focus on real conversation. A real conversation won't always be easy, yet it is one of the most powerful tools for enabling healthy and sustainable change and creating high performance in your organizations. That's it for now. I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.